Most people know William Bligh as the captain from the Mutiny on the Bounty. What far fewer people know is that he somehow ended up involved in another mutiny. This time, it happened in Australia. On January 26, 1808, 300 soldiers marched through Sydney with fixed bayonets and loaded muskets. Their target wasn't escaped convicts. It wasn't a foreign army. It was their own governor. Within hours, William Bligh was under arrest, and Australia had experienced the only military coup in its history. So how did Australia end up overthrowing its own government? To answer that, we need to talk about rum. Sydney was growing. The tents had become houses. The houses had become streets. The harbour bustled with ships and trade. But one thing remained in desperately short supply: money. So the colony found its own solution: rum. Rum paid wages. Rum settled debts. Rum bought influence. And before long, the men who controlled the rum controlled New South Wales. Officially, the New South Wales Corps existed to protect the colony. Unofficially, many people believed it had become one of the most profitable business operations in the Southern Hemisphere. And standing near the centre of it all was one man, John MacArthur. Intelligent, ambitious, successful, and according to a remarkable number of people who met him, an absolute bastard. One enemy called him a viper. Another called him a monster of society.
You are a dastardly coward. Despicable littleness pervades your every action. Return to your original nothing. We know what you have been, and we know what you are.
Even people who admired him often struggled to like him. But if John MacArthur was the colony's chief schemer, his wife Elizabeth was often the steadier and more capable partner. While John fought feuds, challenged governors, and made enemies across the colony, Elizabeth managed farms, oversaw business affairs, and helped lay the foundations of what would become Australia's wool industry. In many ways, she was the practical force behind the family's success. Together, they became one of the most powerful families in New South Wales, and one of the most controversial. MacArthur had already tested authority once before. In 1801, he fought a duel with his commanding officer, shot him in the shoulder.
None shall provoke me with impunity.
Was sent to England to face court-martial, and somehow returned several years later, not disgraced, but carrying support for what would become Australia's wool industry. MacArthur possessed a rare gift. He could turn punishment into opportunity. London eventually decided somebody needed to bring the Rum Corps under control.
Captain Bligh is firm in discipline, civil in deportment, and not given to whimper and whine when severity of discipline is wanted.
So they sent a new governor. His name was William Bligh. This would prove to be a terrible idea. Most people remember Bligh as the captain from the Mutiny on the Bounty. The reality was more complicated. He was an exceptional navigator, a brave naval officer, a capable administrator. He was also astonishingly difficult. Even people who agreed with him often ended up hating him. Bligh possessed a remarkable talent for turning disagreements into lifelong feuds, which made him exactly the man London needed, and possibly the worst man they could have chosen.
Governor Hunter couldn't break me. Governor King couldn't break me, and now they send a man called Bligh. I almost feel sorry for him.
In 1806, Bligh arrived in Sydney. Almost immediately, he encountered John MacArthur.
You have got 5,000 acres of land in the finest situation in the country. But by God, you shan't keep it.
Bligh saw a monopolist enriching himself at the colony's expense. MacArthur saw an interfering governor threatening everything he had built. Neither man knew how to back down. The collision course had begun. By January 1808, government in Sydney was barely functioning. Military officers refused to cooperate. The governor threatened prosecutions. The officers ignored him. Government ground to a halt.
The troops are ready.
Then Major George Johnston made his decision.
A series of almost incredible circumstances have imposed on me the distressing task and responsibility of superseding the authority vested in Governor Bligh.
On January 26th, 20 years after the First Fleet arrived, 300 soldiers assembled. Bayonets fixed, muskets loaded, drums beating. The column marched through Sydney's dusty streets toward Government House. Residents watched from doorways. Some cheered, others simply stared. No one had ever seen anything like it. Australia's only military coup was underway. Within hours, Bligh had been removed from power. Later stories claimed he was discovered hiding beneath a bed. The truth is probably less dramatic, but the image proved irresistible. It became one of the most famous political cartoons in Australian history. What mattered was this: the governor had fallen, the Rum Corps had won, or so it seemed.
Aye! To the victory!
Back in Britain, news of the coup produced a very different reaction. The British government took a surprisingly dim view of military officers overthrowing governors. The rebellion's leaders were recalled. Major George Johnston was ordered home. John MacArthur's position became increasingly fragile. The Empire had decided the experiment was over. A new governor would restore order. His name was Lachlan Macquarie. Macquarie inherited a colony divided by years of corruption, personal feuds, and political warfare. And then there was William Bligh. Released on the understanding that he would return to England, Bligh promptly ignored the arrangement. Instead, he seized the vessel intended to carry him home and sailed to Van Diemen's Land. Then things became even stranger. Bligh attempted to persuade the authorities in Hobart to invade New South Wales on his behalf. The Tasmanians declined. Bligh responded in the only way he knew how. He started making enemies. At one point, he offended Lieutenant Governor David Collins so thoroughly that Collins later remarked,
God knows I never had any malice in my heart until I came into contact with this detestable brute.
Bligh then spent months effectively blockading Hobart. When supplies ran low, he reportedly allowed ships through only if their captains provided food and provisions. Australia's deposed governor had somehow transformed himself into a floating nuisance. Meanwhile, Lachlan Macquarie arrived in Sydney determined to move on. Roads were built. Public buildings rose from the dirt. Institutions appeared. For the first time, the colony began to look less like a prison camp and more like a society. Bligh, unfortunately, did not move on. He wanted punishment, justice, retribution. Macquarie mostly ignored him. Privately, he found Bligh exhausting, calling him
The most disagreeable person to have any dealings or public business to transact with.
John MacArthur's story took its own strange turn. After years defending himself in Britain, he returned to New South Wales a diminished man. His judgment declined. His behaviour became erratic. And as John faded, Elizabeth MacArthur increasingly took charge. So who won the Rum Rebellion? Not Bligh, not Johnston, not MacArthur, not the Rum Corps, The winner was New South Wales. Australia's only military coup showed London that the colony could no longer be run like a private business protected by soldiers. The Rum Rebellion was never really about rum. It was about monopoly, corruption, power, ego, and who got to own the future. Which, when you think about it, is a remarkably Australian origin story.